At my daughter's birthday party, he announced to everyone, "My mom's boyfriend is taking me to Disney World. My dad never takes me anywhere cool." I just smiled and said, "Have fun, princess." The next day, my attorney filed to amend our parenting plan, and the college fund I was building quietly dissolved. Wife is now asking why I'm being petty. I, 34 am, stood there holding a princess-themed cake with pink frosting, candles flickering in the afternoon light filtering through the backyard trees, when my daughter made her announcement. She was turning 8. The party was at my house, the one I'd bought specifically so she'd have her own room when she stayed with me. 20 kids ran around the yard, parents chatted near the snack table, and I was about to lead everyone in singing happy birthday. That's when she said it, loud enough for everyone to hear. Her mom's boyfriend was taking her to Disney World. I never took her anywhere cool. The conversations around me died. I felt every parent's eyes shift toward me, some pitying, others uncomfortable. My daughter stood there in her purple dress, completely oblivious to what she'd just done, excited about her upcoming trip. She wasn't trying to hurt me. She was 8. But the damage was done. I smiled, told her to have fun, princess. We sang happy birthday. I cut the cake. I handed out slices. I cleaned up wrapping paper. I played the part of the good dad for another 3 hours until the last guest left. Then I sat alone in my kitchen and stared at the wall. For 2 years since the divorce, I'd bent over backward. I paid my child support on time, every month, never late. I covered half of everything else too, even though the agreement didn't require it. School supplies, medical bills, extracurriculars. I took the weeknight custody schedule that meant I was constantly driving back and forth, disrupting my work, because my ex wanted weekends free. I never complained. I showed up to every school event, every recital, every soccer game. And I've been building something else. Something nobody knew about. A college fund. Not the one we'd agreed to split contributions on. A separate one, in my name only, that I'd been feeding steadily since the divorce was finalized. $25,000 so far. I'd planned to grow it to 6 figures by the time she turned 18. I'd cut back on everything to make it happen. I drove a 7-year-old car. I hadn't taken a real vacation in 2 years. I wore the same 4 shirts on rotation. Every extra dollar went into that account. I'd imagine the moment I'd tell her about it. Maybe when she was 17, stressing about college applications. I'd sit her down and show her the statements. Tell her that her old man had her back. Always had. Always would. I'd pictured her face, the gratitude, the realization that I'd been working for her future all along. That fantasy died in my backyard next to the bounce house. The next morning, I called my attorney. We'd worked together through the divorce, and he knew the case inside and out. I told him what happened at the party. He listened without interrupting. When I finished, he asked me what I wanted to do. I told him to file an amendment to the parenting plan. I wanted the minimum custody the court would grant. Every other weekend, no weeknight visits. I wanted to adjust my child support to exactly what the state guidelines required, not a penny more. I wanted every optional expense split exactly per the agreement, with documentation, no more casual Venmo transfers when she needed something. He asked if I was sure. I told him I'd never been more sure of anything. Then I called the bank. The college fund was in my name, my money, completely separate from any joint assets or agreements. I liquidated it. All $25,000. I moved it into my general savings. It sat there like a monument to my own stupidity. The attorney filed the paperwork that afternoon. My ex would be served within a few days. I spent the next week in a strange calm. I went to work, came home, ate simple meals, watched television without really seeing it. My daughter called twice. I answered, kept it light, asked about school. She told me more about the Disney trip. I listened and made appropriate sounds of interest. She didn't notice anything different. The bomb dropped on a Thursday. My ex called me screaming. Not upset, not angry, screaming. She'd been served with the paperwork at her office. She wanted to know what the hell I thought I was doing. I let her yell for a solid minute before I said anything. I told her I was adjusting our arrangement to something more sustainable for me. She said I was being petty. Said I was punishing our daughter because of something her boyfriend did. I corrected her. I told her I was punishing our daughter because of something our daughter did. And I was adjusting my life because I'd realized I was investing in someone who didn't value the investment. She called me a bastard and hung up. Her boyfriend called an hour later. That was bold. He tried the reasonable approach, man to man, said he didn't mean to cause problems. He just wanted to do something nice for the kid. I told him he succeeded. Then I told him to lose my number and hung up. My ex called back that night, calmer. She wanted to talk in person. I agreed. We met at a coffee shop the next day, neutral ground, no kid around. She looked tired. Asked me what was really going on. Said this wasn't like me. I laid it out simply. For 2 years I'd been the dependable one. The one who showed up, the one who paid. The one who rearranged his entire life around a custody schedule that benefited her. And at my daughter's birthday party, in front of everyone I knew, I got a public announcement that I was the boring parent who never did anything cool. Meanwhile, her boyfriend of 6 months got to be the hero with a Disney trip. She tried to argue that our daughter didn't mean it that way. I agreed. I told her an 8-year-old doesn't understand the weight of her words. But those words existed now, and they'd clarified something for me. I was putting in maximum effort for minimum appreciation. That was a bad investment. So I was correcting it. She asked about the college fund. That stopped her. I watched her face trying to process it. She asked how I even had money for a separate college fund. I explained my lifestyle for the past 2 years. The sacrifices I'd made that nobody noticed. The plan I'd had. She called me spiteful. Said I was hurting my own daughter out of ego. I corrected her again. I told her I was reallocating resources to someone who would appreciate them. Namely, myself. I'd been killing myself to be super dad, and super dad got humiliated at a birthday party. Regular dad was less work and came with fewer disappointments. She didn't have a response to that. We sat in silence for a minute. Then she tried a different angle. She said our daughter loved me, that I was overreacting to one comment at one party. Kids say dumb things. I needed to be the adult. I was being the adult. Adults don't continue relationships that are one-sided. Adults don't pour effort into people who broadcast their inadequacy to a crowd. Adults protect themselves. She started crying. Not loud, just tears running down her face. She said I was destroying our daughter's relationship with me over pettiness. Said I'd regret this. Maybe I would. But I'd regret being taken for granted more. The meeting ended badly. She left angry. I went home and felt nothing. Update 1. The custody modification hearing was set for 6 weeks out. In the meantime, everything continued as normal, legally speaking. I still had the same custody schedule. But I'd changed. I stopped going above and beyond. When my daughter needed new soccer cleats, I told my ex to send me a receipt for half. When there was a school fundraiser, I contributed exactly what was required, not the extra I usually threw in. When my ex asked if I could swap a weekend because her boyfriend had concert tickets, I said no. My daughter noticed. On our next weeknight visit, she asked why I seemed different. I told her I wasn't different, just tired from work. She accepted that. Kids usually do. But my ex didn't. The texts started coming more frequently. I was being cold. I was changing. I was letting my hurt feelings affect my parenting. I didn't respond to most of them. When I did, I kept it short and factual. 2 weeks before the hearing, my ex showed up at my house unannounced. My daughter wasn't with me. It was an off week. She stood on my porch and said we needed to talk, really talk, without attorneys or anger. I let her in. We sat in my living room, the same room where I'd hosted the birthday party. She looked around like she was seeing it for the first time. Asked if I'd redecorated. I hadn't. She'd just never paid attention before. She started by apologizing. Said she'd been defensive and hadn't really heard what I was saying before. She understood now that I'd been hurt. She got it. But she wanted me to understand something too. She'd been scared after the divorce. Scared of being alone, of raising our daughter alone, of failing. When she met her boyfriend, it felt like relief. Like someone was stepping up to help shoulder the burden. She hadn't thought about how it would look to me, hadn't considered that his involvement might feel like replacement rather than addition. I listened, didn't interrupt. She said the Disney trip was his idea, that he'd offered to take both of them, trying to bond with the most important person in her life. She'd thought it was sweet. Hadn't realized it would become a weapon in our daughter's mouth. I asked if she understood why I was pulling back. She said she did, but she didn't agree with it. She thought I was hurting myself as much as anyone else. That I'd wake up in 5 years and realize I'd missed out on my daughter's childhood because I was proving a point. Maybe. But I'd also spent 2 years proving I was dependable and got nothing for it except public embarrassment. At some point, you stopped touching the hot stove. She asked what it would take to fix this. To get me to drop the custody modification and go back to how things were. I told her that ship had sailed. The old arrangement existed because I was willing to bend. I wasn't willing anymore. But I offered a compromise. I'd agree to a middle ground. Alternate weeks instead of every other weekend. Split holidays evenly. Maintain the child support at current levels instead of reducing it. In exchange, she'd acknowledge in writing that any expenses beyond the required split were gifts, not obligations. And the college fund stayed dissolved. She asked why I was being so rigid about the money I'd already saved. Because that money represented something. It represented the version of me that believed effort would be appreciated. That version was gone. The money was evidence of his death. I wasn't resurrecting him. She left without agreeing to anything. Update 2. The hearing came. We both showed up with our attorneys. The judge was a middle-aged woman who'd probably heard every custody dispute variation known to humanity. She looked tired before we even started. My attorney presented our case. I was requesting a modification based on changed circumstances, specifically seeking a more balanced arrangement that didn't place the burden of constant accommodation on my client. He emphasized that I wasn't seeking to reduce my time with my daughter out of malice, but rather to establish a sustainable pattern that recognized both parents' needs. My ex's attorney painted me as vindictive, said I was punishing a child for being a child, that I was willing to damage my relationship with my daughter over wounded pride. They brought up the college fund, framing it as evidence that I was willing to harm my daughter financially to make a point. The judge asked me directly why I wanted to reduce my custody time. I told her the truth. I'd been operating under an arrangement that required me to be constantly flexible while my ex maintained rigidity. I'd done it willingly because I wanted maximum time with my daughter. But I'd realized that arrangement wasn't valued by anyone involved. My daughter openly preferred the parent who gave her exciting experiences. My ex treated my flexibility as obligation rather than gift. I was establishing boundaries that protected my own well-being. The judge asked if I loved my daughter. I said of course I did. That's why I was doing this. Because I couldn't be a good parent while being taken for granted. I needed to establish a relationship based on mutual respect, and that couldn't happen when I was bending over backward to make everyone else's life easier while mine got harder. She asked about the college fund. I explained it was money I'd saved independently, that there was already an agreed-upon college savings plan in place, that this was separate and discretionary. I'd chosen to redirect those funds because my priorities had changed. My ex's attorney called it financial abuse. I asked how it could be abused to stop giving someone money they never knew existed. You can't abuse someone by not giving them a gift they weren't aware of. The judge thought about that. Then she asked my daughter's age. 8. She made a note. She asked if there were any abuse or neglect concerns. Both attorneys said no. She asked if I was current on all court-ordered payments. My attorney confirmed I was. The judge said she'd issue a ruling within a week. We left the courthouse separately. My ex texted me that night. Said I'd just damaged our daughter in ways I couldn't understand. That I was choosing pride over love. I didn't respond. The ruling came back 5 days later. The judge split the difference. Alternating weeks, split holidays, child support remained at current levels. She noted in her written order that both parents appeared committed to their child's welfare and that the modification seemed designed to create more equity in the arrangement rather than reduce parental involvement. My ex was furious. Her attorney had pushed hard for keeping the old arrangement. She texted me that she hoped I was happy, that I'd gotten what I wanted. I wasn't happy, but I was no longer unhappy. That was something. Update 3. 6 months passed under the new arrangement. Alternating weeks created a rhythm that was less chaotic for everyone. I wasn't constantly driving back and forth. I could plan my life in week-long blocks. My daughter adjusted faster than I expected. Kids are resilient that way. The college fund money sat in my savings account. I didn't touch it, didn't invest it, didn't spend it. It just existed, a reminder of the person I used to be. My daughter turned 9. This time, her party was at her mom's house with her mom's people. I attended, brought a present, stayed for an appropriate amount of time, and left. No one announced anything uncomfortable. It was fine. My relationship with my daughter wasn't damaged the way my ex had predicted. Different, maybe. Less desperate on my end. I'd stopped trying to be the super dad who compensated for the divorce by being everything to everyone. I was just her dad. Present, consistent, but not breaking himself to prove something. She asked me once why I didn't come around as much as I used to during the week. I told her the truth in terms she could understand. Sometimes people need to make changes to be healthier. I'd been stretched too thin before, and now I wasn't. It wasn't about her. It was about me taking care of myself so I could take care of her better. She seemed to accept that. The Disney trip happened. She came back with pictures and stories. I looked at the pictures and listened to the stories. It was fine. Her mom's boyfriend existed in her life. That was reality. I didn't have to compete with him. My ex eventually stopped calling me petty in texts. The anger faded into something more like resigned acceptance. We weren't friends, but we were functional co-parents. That was enough. One night, my daughter asked me if I was mad at her about what she said at her birthday party the year before. That surprised me. I thought she'd forgotten about it entirely. I asked her why she was thinking about that. She said her mom had mentioned it during an argument. Said something about how one comment had changed everything. My daughter had been thinking about it since then, trying to figure out what she'd said that was so bad. I sat her down, told her she hadn't said anything bad. She'd said something true from her perspective. Her mom's boyfriend was taking her somewhere exciting, and I hadn't. That was factual. But hearing it the way I heard it had made me realize some things about myself and what I needed to change. It wasn't her fault. She was a kid being honest. I was an adult who needed to learn something. She asked if I still loved her. I told her I'd never stopped. Not for 1 second. But love doesn't mean destroying yourself for someone. It means being healthy enough to show up consistently. That's what I was doing now. She hugged me. We watched a movie. It was a good night. The money still sits in my account. Sometimes I think about what I'd originally planned to do with it. The moment I'd imagined, showing her the statements, seeing her realize what I'd done for her. That moment would never happen now. But maybe that was okay. Maybe the lesson was more valuable than the money. Maybe she'd learn more from watching me establish boundaries than from receiving a windfall she hadn't earned. Or maybe I was just rationalizing my own spite. I still don't know. But I do know I can look at myself in the mirror now without feeling like a doormat. That's worth something. My ex sent me a text last week. Said her boyfriend had proposed. They were getting married next summer. She wanted to know if I'd be okay with him being introduced as a stepfather to our daughter. I responded that it was her life and her household. She didn't need my permission for her relationships. As long as he treated our daughter well, I had no objection. She thanked me for being mature about it. The irony wasn't lost on me. A year ago, I would have spiraled over that text. Would have felt replaced, inadequate, defeated. Now I just felt neutral. He was marrying her, not me. He was becoming part of my daughter's life, but he wasn't erasing me from it. I'd learned something important over the past year. You can't make people appreciate you. You can only decide what you're willing to accept and what you're not. I'd accepted being taken for granted for 2 years. Then I stopped. The fallout had been messy and painful and probably cost me something with my daughter that I'll never get back. But it also gave me something. My dignity, my boundaries, my sense of self-worth that wasn't tied to how much I could sacrifice. The college fund money will probably go toward my retirement eventually. Or maybe I'll take a trip somewhere I've always wanted to go. Or maybe I'll just leave it sitting there forever, a memorial to the dad I used to be. I don't regret what I did. Some people might think that's cold. They might think a real father would have swallowed his pride and kept sacrificing. Maybe they're right. But I think a real father also teaches his daughter that people have limits, that relationships require mutual respect, and that love without boundaries isn't sustainable. She'll understand that someday. Or she won't. Either way, I'll be here, consistent and present within the boundaries I've set. Not the super dad. Not the birthday party hero. Just her dad, flawed and human and doing his best with what he has. And that'll have to be enough.